I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has warned the omens are grim from Russia and the world can't underestimate what's at stake if the country invades Ukraine. Boris Johnson's comments came after the Kremlin confirmed it had successfully launched hypersonic missiles as part of nuclear drills. And Kiev also reported the death of a soldier killed in shelling by pro-Russian separatists. The Prime Minister told the Munich Security Conference it's vital that any violent act of aggression by President Putin fails.
If Ukraine is overrun by brute force, I fail to see how a country encompassing nearly 250,000 can be held down and subjugated forever. After a generation of freedom, staring at a generation of bloodshed and misery. I believe that Russia would have absolutely nothing to gain from this catastrophic venture and everything to lose.
The Prime Minister later spoke to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, reiterating the UK's unequivocal support for the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Boris Johnson also agreed with the US assessment that Russia's president has made up his mind to attack the capital, Kiev.
I think that certainly things are in motion, but the question is whether it can all be pulled back and whether the president of Russia is still able to call this operation off. I think that possibility must logically still exist, and therefore I think it's absolutely vital that we have a path of dialogue.
Boris Johnson there. Also speaking in Munich, US Vice President Kamala Harris said Russia will suffer unprecedented financial costs if it invades Ukraine.
And we will target those who are complicit and those who aid and abet this unprovoked invasion. Make no mistake, the imposition of these sweeping and coordinated measures will inflict great damage on those who must be held accountable.
Insurers say the clean-up bill after Storm Eunice could exceed £300 million. Yellow weather warnings for heavy snow are still in place for Yorkshire and Lancashire, and more than 200,000 homes are still without power after yesterday's extreme conditions. Record-breaking winds killed at least 4 people, damaging buildings and bringing down trees, blocking lines across the rail network. Meteorologist John Hammond says there's more bad weather to come.
Very worst is over. We're not going to see gusts as high as we saw yesterday, but we're in for a rough ride over the next few days, that is for sure. What we really want, of course, is prolonged calm weather, but that's not really what we're going to get. We are going to see some rain pushing in from the west through today, but the winds, probably more importantly, are going to pick up yet again.
More than 100 people have been arrested in Canada after 3 weeks of protests against the country's COVID restrictions. Lorry drivers who brought the city of Ottawa to a standstill were removed from the capital by police. They were arrested and detained on mischief charges. Nearly 24 vehicles were also towed away, including those blocking one of the city's major roads. Ottawa police say one officer suffered a minor injury and no protesters were hurt. That's it from me. I'll be back in around an hour's time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Rather windy with a band of rain and hill snow edging eastwards. Let's take a look at the details. It will be a windy day with coastal gales expected in the southwest. It will be mainly dry, but there will be isolated blustery showers, which will be heavy at times. Heavy rain will clear to the east of southeast England with scattered heavy showers following. It will be rather windy, especially towards the south. A windy day in Wales, especially towards the south coast where gales are likely. Rather cloudy with some brighter spells, but also some blustery showers. It will be cloudy in the northwest with outbreaks of rain at times, the rain falling as sleet or snow over the higher ground of the Pennines and Cumbria. Brisk winds and also feeling chilly. The northeast of England will be generally drier and brighter with some sunny spells, although rain and hill snow will affect Pennine areas. The brightest conditions are expected to be in the north. It will be mostly dry over southern Scotland, with the best of the sunshine being in eastern areas, cloudier in the west with a few showers likely, these possibly wintry. Rain and hill snow will clear eastwards with scattered showers, possibly wintry, and sunny spells then following for the west. A chilly feeling day for all, especially in the wind, turning dry for a time this evening before further rain arrives in the west to affect most areas later, and that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
The GB News pub is open. Joining me tonight is Tracy Miller, author, youth worker and former gang member. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
To the programme. Not at all. Now, policing, much in the news. And it kind of in London always is, isn't it? You know, you're from Brixton, and I remember, 40 years ago, there were huge disputes about the sus laws. That debate goes on today in terms of stop and search and what the police should do and what the police shouldn't do. Cressida Dick's gone. We've now had Ken Marsh of the Police Federation today expressing no confidence in Sadiq Khan. I mean, it's a real mess. Before doing these great works that you're doing, we're going to share just with the audience a little bit. You kind of fell into bad ways quite early on.
That's correct. When I was younger, I just couldn't behave, and that was due to a bad home life.
Yeah.
I just feel like my foundations weren't set correctly, so I felt angry at the world, and I just took my anger to the streets.
And you got involved in gangs.
Indeed, I did.
And those gangs were involved with, I guess, drugs?
Various things.
Violence?
Various things.
Well, I mean, I've looked at your CV, and, you sort of carrying knives, and I think you were shot once, and is it very easy, living in inner London, is it very easy to get involved in gang culture?
It's not easy growing up in South London or London in particular. And yeah, there are things that I did when I was younger. You listed a few. It's not something I'm proud of.
No, sure.
So I don't want your viewers to think that by any means I'm proud of anything I've done in the past. But because of the past that I did have, I felt like I can help young people get past it and not live a wayward life. But yeah, it is hard. You're surrounded by different things that young people shouldn't see. You're exposed to different things, just being on the streets, just walking along your normal estate. So you do pick up stuff that you shouldn't really be picking up or seeing, Do
you think these young people today, growing up in South London or wherever it is, do they resent the police?
They don't trust the police. They don't like the police. And it's something that, I can't lie, in the Jamaican household, in the black culture community, culture, police are not trusted. You don't speak to police, you don't call for police, you don't ask for help. If you're going through the worst things, you just deal with it yourself. And I think that does need to change.
But the police have a job to do.
They have a job to do, but what is the job they are actually doing? If it means they're going to keep stopping and searching young black boys in hoodies, it just shows there's an unfairness. Is it a conscious bias? Is it an unconscious bias? And therefore they have no trust in the police.
Well, they might be stopping white boys in hoodies.
I haven't seen that really often when I'm out and about on the streets. Have you seen young white boys being stopped often? I haven't.
I rarely see the police on the streets, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd like to see more of them. But as I said to you at the start of this conversation, I remember 1981 and that incredible friction that was there between, and it was predominantly Jamaican or households that had come originally from Jamaica and the police. And kind of what you're telling me is 40 years on, it's no better.
It's no better. There are good and bad in all sectors of life. You have some good officers, because I've seen for myself, you've got some officers that genuinely do care, but you've got some bad seeds as well, and they need to be weeded out. It's as simple as that.
Knife crime is going up every year. The percentage climbs over the last sort of 5-7 years are quite alarming. It seems that some young people now are carrying knives as protection because they think the other person may have a knife.
That's fair to say, yep.
And I think that is happening.
Yep.
What the hell do we do, Tracy?
I just think parents need to grab hold of their children and school them, show them love, and let them know that's not the way to be. That's, you know, if you carry a knife, there's that chance that you're actually going to use it. And it's that fear that they have as well. Maybe if they participated in sports and stuff where they could do self-defense, they wouldn't feel the need to be armed. And the thing is, knives are so accessible. They're in your mum's kitchen. They're everywhere. So it's something that goes unnoticed.
Okay, so parenting is important.
Parenting is 100%.
And you had a bad start on that score.
Important, and education as well. And just, I don't know, a lot of youngsters don't do it. They don't do it because they want to. Like you said, they feel like they have the need. They need to do it. They need to protect themselves. So it's just education and letting them know that you all can get on, you all can agree. If you don't, there's fisticuffs. You can have a normal fight. You don't have to want to take a life. You don't have to push a sharp object into someone who you dislike. You know, so they need to be rewired, so to speak.
So the parent, I mean, I get the parenting bit, you know, but not everybody has, and you were one, not everybody has a fortunate home life situation, so it's more difficult for them. Where do the schools fit in, or don't they?
The schools do fit in because they can pick up on children's behaviour from early. For example, when I was going through my wayward behaviour stage, I did have some form of intervention, but it wasn't enough. So they can tell when kids seem depressed, something's not right at home. They're with kids most of the time. As you are with the family, you are in school. It's like you spend a lot of time at work. I'm sure your colleagues will pick up on a day when you're not so happy.
Oh, almost every day. No, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. So, Tracy, what do you do now to try and inspire people? To try and help kids not fall off?
So what I done in 2014, I think, I released a book about my life, and it wasn't for me to glamorise myself and try and get famous off money. It was about youngsters seeing that actually it's all a dream. What you think it is, it's not that. It was for politicians to look and see what lives were like for children like myself. It was for parents to have a look and think about what children are doing when they're away from their periphery. You know, so I just speak to kids, I mentor and do different things. I've got youngsters that can call me on my actual mobile phone any time of the night and let me know that something's not right, and I'll just advise them. You can't dictate to children, you can't force them, but you can give them other ways and other things and other viewpoints to look at, and it's all about perceptions, isn't it?
Yeah. No. Well, I get it that you're out there and you're trying, and that's a really positive contribution that you're making. But as I said, it does seem things are getting worse. I mean, drugs are just everywhere. Knives are being carried by more and more young people. I mean, do you feel, if you look forward from where we are now, do you feel optimistic we can turn our cities around, or are we in decline? Are we in a downward spiral?
I'm always optimistic. I live that kind of life. I live in an optimistic bubble. It's good to be positive. I just think youngsters need more role models. Also, there's a lot of things that they take in from TVs and music and stuff that could send them on a path of badness. It's influence.
Do you mean drill music and some of the really aggressive?
Why would it be drill music?
Well, because it uses words that...
Whatever music is not satisfactorily good at the time for youngsters to hear, I'll just put it on that. It's not necessarily just drill music.
It's pretty violent stuff, though, isn't it?
But then that's like saying they can watch James Bond. What does James Bond show? He's an assassin and a lovely man, but he's an assassin and a womanizer. And he's good with guns. And it seems that it's okay, you know? So it depends on what the child's watching and what they take from what they're watching and what they think they can bring into real life.
I don't know. I mean, I don't listen to that music, but I have.
You should try it.
I've heard it. I've been quite shocked by it, actually. Shocked by the language, shocked by the... It's pretty anti-women, isn't it? It's, you know, the males are supreme, the women do as they're told. It's quite an aggressive... I mean, some of this stuff's quite aggressive.
I just feel like it's their form of expression. If you can't express yourself through music, what can you do? I'd rather they express themselves through music than take to the streets and act out.
One thing was certain. If you use those if anyone used that language here at GBNews, they'd be out the door before.
But what language are you referring to? Like,
oh, you know the words they use and the way they talk about women. And anyway, look, I don't want to dwell on it, but I mean there are aggressive influences out there in life.
Yeah.
And you know I get that. I think James Bond. Well, yes, you're right. He is a professional assassin. However. Apart from that, he takes out baddies, and that's the moral of the story, I guess. So, Tracy, you think we can turn this around? You think we can... I mean, sport 100%. you mentioned, and I had...
Sport? Well, sport would be good if they could learn self-defence, maybe be a bit more confident when they're out and about. They got into an altercation.
Yeah,
that's
I had Duke Mackenzie on the programme a few months ago from Croydon. So, again, South London. And, phenomenal professional, world champion boxer, all the rest of it. And that's one of the points that he made, was that, where he grew up in Croydon, there just isn't the access somehow to sport unless you've got money. And it's very, very difficult. Maybe sport's one way, maybe education's one way.
Definitely education.
Maybe just more people like you going out and doing their best to try and mentor and train people.
And parents definitely need to play their part. I understand that parents can get lost in having to go to work and provide for their children, but they also need basic things like love and attention and care. And it goes a long way.
Do you think parents are scared of tackling teenage kids?
I work with teenage kids, and yes, they are. They are very scared of their children, and it's like, come on, get a grip. You birthed this child. Get back in touch, reconnect. They're still children, and I think people don't have enough empathy. It's all good to want to write them off when they're doing wrong, but they are still children, and there's a reason for their behaviour,
Final thought, Tracy Miller. What role do you see for the church in all of this?
The church.
Does the church exist in these communities?
The church, or do you mean just a religion in general?
Just religion in general. Because I do notice, some Sundays I've been driving through South London, and I do notice, actually, there are congregations heading off to churches, kind of, particularly in the black community, some of the evangelical type churches appear
that can
to
be
have
helpful.
good followings.
That can be helpful. I attended a church. Even though I was raised in an Islamic household and I went to the mosque, there were times where I did attend the church, and it is a warm and inviting environment. But again, it's what those particular parents are teaching their kids when they're away from the church, and it depends on how extreme they are when they're talking about religion and God and what children should be doing. So again, it's back to the parents.
Yeah, right, there we are. It's up to you folks at home to make sure your teenagers all behave. Tracy Miller, thank you for joining me here on Talking Pints.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Well, he's an actor, he's a singer, he's a West End entertainer, he's been hugely successful. Let's have a little look at what started everything off for Southend boy Lee Mead. Welcome to Talking Pints. Great to see you.
Or talking water, yeah.
Well, that's okay. You've got to perform in a minute, so I fully understand.
Yeah.
So, Southend boy, all the way through. How does it feel for this play? I mean, Southend's always been the end of the line, hasn't it?
It
the end of the
has.
railway
It has.
line.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit ignored, do you think, or?
Potentially over the years, yeah. I mean, I'm so proud to be from Southend, always have been, and I've lived here my whole life. And
yeah, you're still here.
I'm still here, and when we got city status, as you can imagine, like everyone else here tonight, and in the town, I was going to say town and city.
The city?
Yeah.
You've got to change your language here.
It was a wonderful thing, and especially in honour of Sir David as well.
Yeah, and we'll come to Sir David, who I know that you knew very well.
Yeah.
In a moment. So you appear in a talent show. And suddenly you're Joseph.
Yeah, yeah.
You're on the lad from Southend is suddenly
singing to Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, and yeah, it changed my life. It was insane, really. I was knocking around for a few years doing musicals and plays and things, and then by chance auditioned for this TV show. There was 5 months of auditions, 10,000 guys, and it was timing and luck and talent at the same time, I think.
And what's it like on the West End stage? Is it scary?
Not really. I think I've always said this to friends and family. I feel I can be quite a shy person, but on stage I'm most comfortable and at home. I can be singing to 5,000 people or whatever. It's the most bizarre thing.
And you've done. I mean, over these years, you've done so many West End musicals, and of course pantos.
Yeah, I love pantos. I did the Cliffs in Southend about 3 years ago. Jack and the Beanstalk as well. I do love it. It's great because the kids enjoy it, and it's the only form of theatre where you get like the grandparents, the parents, and the grandchildren. You can look out and see 3 generations, and you don't get that with a play or.
But when you're doing panto, when you're doing a musical, you're on stage and you've got a long run. You've got to go on every night, matinee sometimes too, and you've got to do the same thing over and over and over. Is it difficult some mornings to get motivated to go and do it?
It can initially, but somebody told me a great technique, and it's to be as present, like we're talking now, just be as present as possible, which sounds a lot easier than it is, but actually, if you're in the moment with everything you do, then you can really enjoy what you're doing. So I've always stood by that, really. So you're doing a show 8 times a week for a year. It's a great way of thinking, actually, yeah.
Now, you've also had an acting career, including some very big BBC programmes. Now, you may tick me off here, and the audience may disagree with me totally, but you've appeared on Casualty regularly and Holby City. These are the most depressing television shows. I mean, if you're feeling a bit low in life, for God's sake, don't turn them on, you know.
Every scene, is I know, they can be. I've got to be honest, I never watched the show, really.
Well, there you are.
Prior to going into it. I think because I was quite young at the time as well. But there's a lovely chap, Derek Thompson, that played Charlie. He's been in the show for 30-odd years. But I did my very first scene with Derek, and he was great, But I'm lucky to have been in it, because it's a brilliant programme, been running many years, and
but it is a bit, come on, it is a bit depressing.
It could be at times, yeah. But luckily the character I played, Lofty, was more. I didn't do all the surgical stuff and all the the surgery scenes. It was more doing the silly stuff off camera, yeah. But
so, I mean, you've sung, you've had some success with your records, charts, and you've done very, very well. So it's singing, it's West End stage, it's acting. What does Lee Mead really enjoy doing best?
It goes in spells, really, Nigel. I think at the moment, the point in my life and career, I'd love to do a lot more of the singing, the concert stuff. I was lucky enough to bring my own show to the London Palladium last June.
Oh, brilliant.
That was incredible, yeah, the most amazing night. And we filmed the whole thing, did a live album, and it was to have a full orchestra on stage for 2.5 hours where Sinatra performed and all the greats. That was really amazing, yeah. So hopefully, going forward, it'd be nice to do a lot more of the concert work.
And isn't that the way music's gone? Because for entertainers now to earn money, it's doing the live events.
Absolutely, and Spotify is an amazing thing for all of us as the consumer. You pay your £10 a month, but for the performer, we make no more money unless you're Ed Sheeran. It's I think.
Yeah, so you've got to be very high volume.
Absolutely, yeah. I think he once said, Ed Sheeran, that if you had 1 million streams of a song, it's something like £1,000 or 500 quid or something. So you make your money from the live performances, yeah.
No, well, absolutely. Now, I'm going to bring you back to Southend, and as you said, you're very proud of the city status. I mean, today, GB News bringing this show here today to Southend, I guess it's all somewhat bittersweet, isn't it? Because, I mean, the shock that everyone felt when Sir David was fatally killed was very, very sharp indeed. Tell me about your relationship with David.
Oh, I got quite emotional now. I met David when I was 15 for the first time. There was a little theatre called the Focus Youth Theatre. It's now sadly been knocked down. And I was doing a musical called A Slice of Saturday Night, a 60s musical, and David came backstage afterwards. I'll never forget the conversation. He said, "What would you like to do with your life?" And the great thing about David, even to the end, he would give everybody his time, which not many people do these days. And I said, "I'd love to be an actor, a singer one day." He said, "Yeah, keep going." And over the years, we worked a lot together. He even once invited me down to the Houses of Commons with my coloured coat to push the city status for Southend.
You wore it, did you? In the House?
I didn't. He said, "You should come down to the Commons." I was like,
well, you've got some front, haven't you?
I was on tour at the time, and then the Dame Vera Lynn statue, even up until recently, before his death. And but one moment that stuck out for me, that there was a little theatre called the Empire Theatre in Southend that got closed down, and David was there, and I was performing that night, and my nanny Lil was with me, that's sadly not with us anymore. And my mum was with my nan, and he scooped in, took her arm, and he proceeded for the next 15 minutes, quite emotional, sorry, to give her his time. And I'll never forget that. And it says a lot about somebody to... And there's a couple of cameras initially, but it wasn't a PR thing. And he gave her complete attention, up the stairs for the next 15 minutes. And that showed the mark of the man for me. He
does seem to have touched a lot of people's lives in Southend.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he was so loved here. He really was. And
well, I mean, absolutely shocking, ghastly what happened.
Oh,
and I think
barbaric, yeah.
It's going to need a bit of a rethink, I think, in terms of MP surgeries and security and how we go from here, because we mustn't stop that link between members of Parliament and their constituents. But equally, we have to make sure they're safe to go out and meet the public. And that's going to be a big challenge going ahead, because if our MPs hide from us, then, frankly, what is our democracy worth?
It's all about community as well.
Yeah, well, it's nice to hear, the way that he supported you and supported your family. Now, Lee, we're going to finish tonight with you singing. You didn't just come in for a glass of water, you know.
No, I've never sung in a pub as well, apart from karaoke. Being very drunk.
Well, it's the naval and military club, and it's actually rather magnificent, isn't it? And so you're going to sing for us. But,
I am.
But the song you're going to sing for us is linked directly to Sir David Amess, isn't it? So just explain to the audience what you're going to do in a moment.
It is. So we had a wonderful song, and I sung this at the Cliff Pavilion just around the corner, actually, at our main theatre on Sunday night in tribute for Sir David. And I chose this song because it's a man singing about his country and being very patriotic about where he's from. And what better song to sing, because David was so proud to be from Southend. So.
Well, he was proud to be from Southend. He was proud to be English. He was proud to be British.
He was.
He was very proud Brexiteer too, of course. He was. He was on the right team on that one. And, well, look, Lee, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have somebody from Southend on the show. Congratulations on, I think, what you've achieved.
Thank you, Nigel.
Which is fantastic. And thank you for joining me on Talking Pints. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's that time of the day, thank goodness. The GB News Tavern is open, and joining me here on Talking Pints is Sir Martin Sorrell. Sir Martin.
I'm not having a pint.
Well, you haven't got to. We don't force you to.
I was allowed to have a cup of tea.
You can have whatever you like. The concept is not based around alcohol. It's based around the idea that it's not like normal television interviews. It's a chat, it's a conversation, and you can say what the hell you like. Well, we are before the watershed, but
Okay, well, I would try and curb my instincts.
Now, talking about that, you are a workaholic, aren't you?
Micromanager is what some people call it, which I think is a compliment. I don't think that's I think being interested in the details is important. I enjoy my work. My dad always said, find something that you enjoy.
Yep.
An industry you enjoy, and then find a company within it that you enjoy and build a reputation. If you fancy go off and doing something on your own, do it.
So, you've got those years at Saatchi & Saatchi.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's the time of the very famous post.
The first iteration, yes, the first political campaign, Labour.
And what a campaign it was. Labour isn't working, incredible.
Yeah, there were other campaigns as well. British Airways, the Jaffa campaigns, the Israeli citrus, I think it was called. So that was Charlie Saatchi's and Morris Saatchi's. That's where their blooding was. I suppose the BA campaign, Manhattan Landing, was the most famous. John King was revamping British Airways with Colin, and that campaign really sort of repositioned British Airways in a way, and the Labour isn't working. I see the Labour Party actually did seize upon Labour isn't working, and the government isn't working.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those. It's one of those in political
iconic
terms.
images.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also a theme that gets repeated again and again and again.
Absolutely.
But something said to you that being part of a big company wasn't really any good. You had to do your own thing.
No, my dad said, build a reputation, and if at the age of 40, that was the age. That was the age when you don't remember when you were 40, do you?
I do, just.
Looking back to the first 20 years, that's when, and then you retire at 60. That was no longer, but so you look back, and that's when I started WPP in '85 when I was 40. Always sort of hankered after doing that. I mean, you could do anything you wanted to do at Saatchi's, to be fair. Nothing was impossible, as long as you got no credit for it. That was...
Oh, big firms are like that. I'm not saying GB News is like that, I promise. Interestingly, you chose to buy a company that existed already, a manufacturer, making
a basket manufacturer, Dartford, Kent, not down in the London Loop. No, this was in Dartford, and Gordon Sampson was was the owner of it. And actually, you know, he believed in buying things from the liquidator. And I went with a stockbroker, Preston Rabel, and I went to Dartford. And we were, Gordon asked us to come for lunch at about 1:30. So that was the time where, well, he didn't actually ask us to come for lunch, but he asked us for the appointment at 1:30. And we were starving. And we were in Dartford High Street. And I said to Preston, I'm absolutely starving. We're past a fish and chip shop. And we went and got a bag of chips. And we smelt of vinegar and salt when we went into the Dartford Wireworks. And Gordon thought, to his dying day, sadly, thought that we had sort of fixed it to appear to be men of the people by smelling of fish.
But why do you buy a wire basket manufacturer?
It's a shell company.
Just a shell company.
What the Americans now call a SPAC, but that's a little bit more expensive game with 20% promotes or 25% promotes and lots of hidden fees, and it's a much more complicated process. Though this was a cash shell, not a cash shell, it had a manufacturing business. And we said we wanted a very simple manufacturing business that we understood, mature but not senile management, because they had to manage the manufacturing business whilst we took it in to services. And of course, the rest is history. We did, I think, 18 deals within about 18 months, and then we launched into America, and we did the reverse takeover, effectively, of J. Walter Thompson in 1987, having started with WPP in 85.
So it moved very quickly, didn't it?
It moved very quickly, yes.
Why is that? Was there a gap in the market? Had you spotted something that the others hadn't?
I don't know a gap. I mean, a lot of this is sort of serendipity. I mean, a lot of it is... luck plays a very important part of it. My dad used to say, you know, you make your own luck. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're persistent and energetic, you make your own luck. But, you know, we seized upon what was then called the below-the-line activities in advertising and marketing, which were not the sexy areas, the above-the-line, the Manhattan land and landing and labourism working, that sort of above-the-line TV campaigns attracted all the attention. There were a lot of things going along in design and promotion that were less fashionable, which had not been consolidated. So we started the 18 deals or whatever it was that we did in the first couple of years were focused initially in the UK and then in the US on the below-the-line sectors, which were really unloved and actually from a valuation...
Was the industry growing?
Well, it's interesting, you know, just listening in the green room just before, you know, you pointed to inflation, right? And of course, in the 80s and the 90s, we had much more significant inflation. That's a driver for ad spending because we'll see it again this year. It's an interesting point. If clients, like take Unilever, you know, its volume growth was very high in the last quarter at 4%, but it was all price, not volume. Inflation is driving prices to convince consumers to accept that sort of level of pricing. You're going to have to put more money behind advertising and marketing. Okay. So the 80s, to your point, in the 80s, the late 70s, the 80s, and into the 90s, when inflation was much more significant, that drove, to some extent, the growth. I mean, when I was at Saatchi's, interestingly, advertising spend would grow at twice the level of GDP growth. In this new millennium, its advertising proportion to GDP slipped, for example, in the US from 2% to 1%, but is now growing again back to about 1.75% because of the growth of digital advertising, which is a new technological-based development. But going back to your question, in those days, inflation was a driver of spending, and you're sort of seeing that a little bit last year, and you're seeing a bit.
You build this into a massive company.
Yeah, at the largest advertising. Well, we've done it twice. We did with Saatchi's, with Morris and Charles. We did it with WPP, and who knows what we might do with that.
Well, yeah, and it sort of didn't come to the best end for you, but I'm not going to dwell on that. We all have ups and downs in life, and you had a bit of a public shellacking and all the rest of it, but it wasn't a moment to retire.
No, I mean, there were...
I mean, you had enough money to retire.
Yes, but I never really wanted to retire, Nigel. I mean, you know, the portfolio... retirement, playing golf, you might be a great golfer, but not something I think of... I worked for Mark McCormack, but I thought it was a bit of an old man's game. Well, I think it's a bit of an old man's game, so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do portfolio stuff. I didn't want to do private equity. And in a way, the structure at S4 is quite interesting because it has sort of private equity dimensions to it in a listed company form. So it's quite exciting in its way. You know, going back to the WPP experience, my view was that my advice to anybody was choose your company chairman carefully, and look at those dynamics. But I think we had some criticism in 2017 for not adapting to the technological changes as rapidly, which I think was probably fair criticism. When you're trying to move a company with well over 100,000 people, arguably 200,000 people in 113 countries, is not, and multi-branded. It's a multi-branded model, so you have different communities, different verticals that are sort of fighting with one another a little bit, and not in a much more unified purpose, which we have at S4 now with a unitary one single P&L.
And you've gone completely 21st century now. It isn't big billboards.
Well, I was so old when I left WPP at 73. I thought I was too old and tired to wrestle with slow growth or no growth, which is what the analog holding companies have to wrestle with. So I used the Gretzky phrase, I wanted to go to where the puck is going, not where it is now. So I wanted to focus on the areas of growth. I believe you're pushing on an open door. It's much easier. If you're wrestling with an industry that's growing at 2 or 3 or 4%, it's very different to an industry like ours, which is growing at 15 or 20%.
Yeah.
Last year, first 9 months, we were up, 46, 47% organic growth, forget about deals. But we'll reveal our numbers on March the 18th. And, we've said to the market we'll grow at 25%. Initially, we had a very strong start to this year. So, I think things look set very fair. But it's organic growth and focusing. It's much easier to operate in an environment where people are looking at the sky, is one of the ways I would put it, rather than looking at their boots. So tech companies, which are 50%, our biggest client is Google. The second biggest is a well-known telecoms company with a very significant market cap, and probably one of the most valuable companies in the world, but we're NDA'd on it. Third would be Facebook or Meta. Fourth would be BMW and Mondelez, and HP is number 6. And then others in the top 10, Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, PayPal. These are the companies that we work for, very focused on top-line growth and very focused on expansion. And interestingly, when you look at the issues facing GSK or whether Vodafone or a Unilever, the issues they face and the activism they face, the reason that they face them is because there is very little or not sufficient top-line growth. That's really what our business is about, is generating top-line growth.
Martin, when you look at these companies, these giants from San Francisco Bay, does it worry you they've become too big?
I have to be open about it. I'm subjective about it. I'm biased because we look at the digital ecosystem. It's about 20 companies. I won't bore you with running through them, but the 6 of the biggest would be Google, Facebook, and Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, and TikTok, which is part of ByteDance.
Yep.
Their power is, once you're over $1 trillion, you're getting into nation-state territory. I remember it was Lloyd Blankfein, actually, at Goldman, who was asked what happens when the first company goes through $1 trillion market cap. And of course, we're now well through 2. And he said, well, no nation state would let anybody go to 2 trillion. Well, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
And the answer to your question is, I think they're starting to exercise their power in a much more responsible fashion. They're being forced to do so by threat of regulation, threat of breakup, threat of restriction. I mean, the decision here by the CMA on Meta, on Facebook, on its acquisition of Giphy, didn't make any sense, other than the regulator was sending a warning to Facebook or to Meta that acquisitions were off the table. So the answer to your question is, what will happen with those companies is that they will continue to grow because they have such strong market positions, and they do, in many cases, produce goods and services for the consumer at lower prices. In an inflationary environment, that's important. But I think what will happen is that they'll grow, certainly not through acquisition, but through organic growth.
I want to say to Martin, thank you for coming in and joining us, sharing your amazingly successful life.
One thing I want to ask you.
Go on.
Is it true? Lionel Barber once said to me that at Dulwich College, you were called Farage. Is that true?
If you go up to the north of England, they call me Farage there now. So there we are.
So it's not just Dulwich.
No, it wasn't just Dulwich. No, absolutely. And Lionel Barber
But
Lionel Barber got most things wrong anyway. Cheers. Thank you, Sir Martin. It is the GB News Tavern time. We're open. It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Stephen Matchett, American entertainment mogul. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
To GB News and Talking Pints. Great to see you. Now, we're going to get into some of the stars that you've worked with over the years, but you kind of almost were born into a celebrity culture, weren't you? You know,
all the way.
All the way. Your father was involved as a lawyer in the entertainment industry, and you've kind of gone into that. And looking at the list of names, the people you've worked with, you know, Peter Gabriel, Electric Light Orchestra, Bobby Brown, Ozzy Osbourne, Snoop Dogg. Who didn't you work with? How do you get the trust of these people?
I attract them. I get into their heads. I understand them. They're dreamers. I'm a dreamer. And dreamers need people that believe in them and encourage them and basically perpetuate them to go do what they want to do. You give them the boundaries. You tell them you'll support them. Because you live in society. And if I'm telling you I'm going to put out romantic music, like when I had the band Soft Cell, you know, no one believed in that band. That took us 16 months to get that out, and that was in the early 80s. But you sit there and you encourage them, you get them to go do it, you get them to do it. You know, Ozzy Osbourne, when he was thrown out of Black Sabbath and we had the Blizzard of Oz, you know, my role was to just make sure it happened, to get the business money in, keep Jet Records rotating. But I believe in these artists, and I'll sit with the artist, I'll look them in the eyes like I'm looking at you. I'll ask them where the song comes from, what are they seeing, what are they hearing, where do they want to go, who's your audience, what clothing you want to sell them, because you become a lifestyle. And if there's no culture, there's no life. And right now there is no culture. We're just sitting here.
How do these people, you know, because you meet some of these people when they're complete unknowns.
Yes.
And you think, okay, I'm going to back this guy or this girl. How do they cope with that fame when it suddenly happens?
A lot of them can't do it. A lot of them can't do it. You know, some of them, they sit and they become reclusive. You know, and if you study it, they have a few years where they're really motivated and they're like really into it. And you could just see, you know, like the Beatles, they had to break up. My father was part of that breakup. And because I talk a lot and I get in the middle and I'm a people person, you know, I was able to sit and watch it and I got educated by them. They showed me the Apple contracts. And I'm the guy that would get in the middle. I like people, and I will help you win. I do.
Well, I mean, I can see why people are attracted to that. Now, Leonard Cohen, you actually lived with Leonard Cohen for a bit, I understand. Is that right?
I more than lived with him. I mean, my father was his first manager, and Dad wanted Leonard Cohen to be his younger brother. My father loved Leonard. And what he loved about Leonard was that Leonard didn't care. And he kept looking because you don't understand. You're more like Leonard Cohen than maybe even Leonard Cohen's like Leonard Cohen. Because I don't care. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived everywhere. He was the wandering troubadour with his guitar. I'm the wandering dreamer because I believe in a world of love and equality. You know, you give people what they need and you allow other people to go create. So it's 1977, and I had just left Vanderbilt Law School. And I took the California bar because California doesn't honor any other bar because most people want to live in California.
They did. They did.
Then. And then downstairs where I'm at right now, Florida's the same story. So I took the California bar, and then I wanted to go back to Tennessee to run for the U.S. Senate. I was going to go set it up. That was in my head. My father's like, you ain't doing that. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And he says to me, just stay with Leonard. So, yeah, I lived with Leonard. We lived, you know, in what's called West L.A., and he's a trip. And we did the album called the Phil Spector, Leonard Cohen album, Don't Go Home With Your Heart On. And, I mean, he would do one thing and I would do the other, but in our own way, we were similar. He would sit there and tell, oh, woe is me when he was with girls, and I'd be looking at the energy from the girls, and I'm like, this is fantastic, you know? And so I got to know him really, really well. And, I mean, even his songs are so misunderstood. Every time I sit there and I hear Hallelujah, all I could do is just laugh. Because it's not a religious song. It's not a revival song. It's a song, it's 1984, and I'm in New York, and he comes into the apartment, not the apartment, I'm saying it wrong, into the office. We're at 1501 Broadway, and he comes in, and he plops himself down on the chair, and I guess you're waiting for this, and he says, I did it. I go, what? And, you know, and my father comes running, what'd you do, Lenny? He goes, I finally got what I want. He says, I got her. And I'm like, you got who? And he said who he got. And he says that I wrote a song about it. And he played it.
Hallelujah.
It's Hallelujah. And if you listen to those lyrics, you could hear it's about a man finally getting what he wanted. And he got it. And today when they sit there and they're doing their press and everything, I'm like, this is crazy. You know, and if I do nothing else, I just want
a much misunderstood song.
But they do it with other songs. It's like the Star Spangled Banner. That was an English theme song. I'll play it. And whatever his name is, Francis Scott, he wrote poetry and he played the poetry to that song. You know?
Talking of music, and you know, politically, we're probably going to have a few disagreements, but it was really interesting.
Maybe not.
Ahead of 2020, Trump was going around the country doing these huge rallies, and music was a massive part of it. And this was the all-American, everything's got to be American, you've got to manufacture in America, you've got to buy America, it's all got to be American. And all these rallies were held at airstrips because of COVID. So the plane would arrive and Phil Collins would start playing, and you know, the plane would land and David Bowie would be playing. And it really fascinated me that I thought, well, more of the people singing were actually British. Were actually British. So how close are the British and American music scenes?
I'll give it to you an answer. I worked with Phil Collins for many years.
Yep.
I did a few things with David Bowie. Here's the answer. Your country, and I feel English. I mean, if I had a second country, I'm an Anglophile.
Yeah.
I am. You know, I love your country because you believe in dreams and you live a dream. You know, your Prince Andrew story, whatever, all those stories, you have a king and queen. Well, you have a queen and you're about to have a king.
Yeah.
You know, you believe in the dreams. You sell people dreams. You have your castles here. But at the same time, you take people when they're at school and you diagnose them. Are they creative eggs? And you encourage the humanities, you encourage their reading, you encourage them playing instruments, you encourage them to dream. And you set it up where, well, you're obviously not going to go do a work in a bank or something, maybe later. Let's get this done for you. And then they're sitting with their own kind, and when they're with their own kind, people who think and dream like that, they create. And when I was young, like Ray Davies was one of my heroes. Those songs in the 60s,
yeah.
I'm a few years older than you. Yeah. I mean, having him tell me what Waterloo Sunset meant, I mean, that was fantastic. Or Donovan telling me about Atlantis, and I'm wanting to know what the other 7 tribes were when he told me about the 5 tribes. You know, and he didn't know this other 7. And in my new book called Taking Jesus Off the Cross, I finally figured it out.
Your 10th book. You're a prolific writer of books.
I can't stop. I love life. I've lived everywhere. And when I go somewhere, I made an album with the Dalai Lama. I made an album with the Communist Pope that the record labels wouldn't put out. I call him Communist Pope, the Pope from Poland, right, with solidarity. But I love life. And your country...
And you're here in this country now looking at sort of trying to get a rock and roll revival, as I understand it.
Rock and roll, what it is, became a generic term.
Yep.
But I see it differently. A rocker is someone that will shake the system.
Yep.
A roller that is someone that has the courage to roll with what they rocked. Okay, so like Elvis Presley, who I had the pleasure of meeting, he wasn't rock and roll. He was R&B music, you know, and he just could wiggle his waist, and that was like, oh my God, look what he's doing. But that was the 50s. They banned jazz music. Jazz musician in those times, because they were sexy or whatever, that's rock and roll. What did the Beatles do? They came and they rocked the establishment, and they had the establishment doing it, and now they're all sirs. All of them came and they tried to beat England out of all their money with their tax schemes and everything.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
And then what they did is they gave them an access. Okay, if you put your money back in England, it's tax-free. I mean, I learned that game with a couple of the bands that I had in the 70s. I thought it was the most unfair thing in the world. I can't do that in America. America taxes you on citizenship or residency. You tax them here on residency. And then the Queen made them all sirs when they brought the money back here. But without that part, your country, you've created it, you're it. And I know right now that the system that we're living in, this social media, I know it's not right. Whatever it was when it was created was a means for you and I to communicate, and we could do it outside normal channels, but then it became the normal channels. And I'm a student of history. It's quite
dehumanizing, isn't it, some of this stuff?
All the way.
Yeah.
If I go there and I say I'm looking for a record, that computer's telling me what to listen to. I'm against Spotify. It's too big for its own good. It stops creativity. I'm looking for an act that understands what I'm saying. I'm looking for an idealist. I'm looking for a group, a person, people that have a team, a dream. I'll become part of their team. Whatever I can do, they become my legacy.
So you're talent spotting?
Yeah, I'm looking for something that's just different. I have one band now in America that we're breaking called Rock's Revolt and the Velvets. And I want something here. I love your country. I love being here. And I know the answer's here. When I was young, my dad had a record label with Tony Stratton Smith, who was one of the most creative people I knew with Charisma Records. I'm listening to Lindisfarne, and Lindisfarne, I'm learning about the history of Scotland. Stuff's crazy. You know, no one knew those words.
You're a great philosopher, a great thinker about life, and that comes out in much of your writing. And you've run as an independent, haven't you, for office in the States a few times?
I ran for the U.S. Senate. They didn't know what to do. And I started getting on radio without paying radio. They didn't know what to do. And I fell in love with Cuba, and I don't understand my country. Why would you put an embargo on them? You know how you end the embargo? You trade with them. It would be over in an hour.
Well, it's very interesting, actually. The more people trade with each other, the less likely they are ever to want to fight each other. And that's absolutely right.
I give, you give.
When you look at America, if I'm arguing that now about the Ukraine, I'm arguing that we need to have a proper negotiation, you know.
The name?
No, I don't. Go on, tell me.
It means borderland. There was no Ukraine until 1991. That's the end of the Russian Empire. It's the end of the Ottoman Turk Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it wasn't an empire, right? You had all these people sitting there, and they became nationalities. This one hated that one hated this one, and they started killing each other, not understanding you're the same. You may have different cultures. You're the same people.
No, I want us to have a proper negotiated settlement. When you look at America...
By the way, I would bet on it.
Yeah, I pray so. When you look at America today, as a last thought from you, big divisions in America. You know, the left and right loathing each other in a way that we haven't known. An increasing lack of respect for the fact someone's got a different opinion, you know, cancel culture, all of this.
All of it.
I'm going to say thank you
for
joining me on Talking Pints.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking a little drier and calmer, but only for a short while. Let's take a look at the details. Cloud will already begin to increase across southwest England this evening, with outbreaks of rain developing, winds easing for a few hours. Mild this evening with temperatures of 10 degrees Celsius. It will be drier this evening across the southeast and London, with the winds easing too, temperatures falling away over the coming hours. Over to Wales, and after a quiet few hours, cloud and rain will begin to move back in from the west. Winds will also increase. Turning chilly for a time this evening across the Midlands, with clear skies over Birmingham. Winds will fall light ahead of more unsettled weather moving in tonight. Temperatures hovering around 4 degrees Celsius. Any lingering rain, sleet and snow will soon clear away from northern England to leave a dry evening. Temperatures tumbling, with some patchy frost and ice forming ahead of further rain tonight. Frost and ice also for a time across eastern Scotland, whilst in the west we could see cloud and rain beginning to move in from the Atlantic. Winds also increasing along the coasts. Turning increasingly wet across Northern Ireland this evening, with Belfast holding on to the driest weather for longest. Winds increasing from the west too, but staying on the mild side. Wet and windy weather with then sweep across the whole country as we go through tonight. Gales developing by morning, and that is how the weather is shaping up overnight and into tomorrow morning.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.